Ready to start.
Okay, the recording has begun, and we are ready when you are.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for attending this webinar on DC MLR, Meet the Owners. I saw and met Chris Dunleavy while attending the South Africa-Wales match up in RFK, and I was so pleased that he was excited to meet me as much as I was excited to meet him and begin a relationship and a partnership between the union, the Capital Rugby Union, and this DC MLR team. And as many of you know, the Capital Rugby Union spans from Raleigh to Pittsburgh, DC, Virginia, and Maryland are our primary membership, and the board of the Capital is always looking for ways to drive value to our members. And I think that the East Coast is often, particularly the Mid-Atlantic, is often discounted when it comes to rugby and around the country, perhaps around the world. We sold 21,000 seats at the Wales-South Africa game, so that tells me we can't be discounted. And so Chris and I got to talking, and we came up with a couple ideas, and this was the first one to present their vision for Major League Rugby in DC. And thank you both for being here. On the webinar is Paul Sheehy, and then the person presenting will be Chris Dunleavy. Again, Chris McKay said there's a Q&A button up in the top corner, and I just want to encourage everybody, please ask questions as often and much as you want, and they'll get to them as soon as they can. So thank you again for coming. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Chris, for coming. And with that, DC MLR.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate the introduction. Relative to that Q&A button on your screen, if you're able to find that and activate it, you are able to type questions in. You should feel free to do that throughout our presentation, although we are going to hold time for a specific Q&A session at the end. Paul and I will be rolling through this presentation and delivering it continuously. But we do have an administrator or two watching the questions as they come in. They may be able to answer some of them along the way. Others they will try to track and cue us to respond to them at the end. But first off, thank you everybody for your interest and for being on here tonight. Other than a media spot here and there, this is the first real opportunity for Paul and I to go into some detail in sharing with people what our thinking is in evaluating Major League Rugby for the Washington, D.C. area. So we're ready to share the background of that thinking with you, whom we consider really the people that we are most interested in engaging as partners with us in this effort, and that's the rugby community of the greater D.C. metropolitan area. So thank you very much for your interest. We really appreciate you being here. We expect, although that this webinar is actually scheduled to run as late as 9 p.m., we expect we're going to run more quickly than that. This PowerPoint presentation should probably be under 45 minutes by the time we're done. We will take Q&A as long as you guys are interested in, but we're expecting that probably to run till around 8:30. So what are we hoping to cover today? We will give some background to you in three key areas. First, we'll share some information on who we are, Paul Sheehy and Chris Dunleavy, and how we've come together to form an ownership group for a professional rugby team in D.C. We'll share some background on Major League Rugby, how it came together, who it is, and what their plan is for the future. And then we'll share some background, really observations about you guys, about our market and the National Capital Region. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about our vision for the club, and that breaks down into four key categories for this evening. One is about the big picture of strengthening the pathway for rugby development from the youth levels all the way up through the senior and professional levels. We'll talk about our focus on celebrating our rugby community. I'll echo Matt's thoughts. I think we've got one of the great rugby cultures in the United States thriving in the Mid-Atlantic and the D.C. region, and we want our team to be very much about celebrating that community. We want to talk a bit about our intent to create a center for rugby, about the facilities that we're going to need to play in, train in, and hopefully serve as a center of the rugby community for our region. And then finally, we'll get into some detail about rugby operations and what we think this means for you, the players, the clubs, the organizers, the coaches in our region. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So, firstly, that background. Who are the owners? Who is the league? Who is the market? So, DC Major League Rugby, or DC MLR, is shorthand for Chris Dunleavy and Paul Sheehy. I'll introduce myself and then ask Paul to share a little bit of his background. But I'm Chris Dunleavy. I am president of a firm named Brailsford & Dunleavy. It's a construction program management firm that I founded with a partner in D.C. 25 years ago, and we've been in business continuously since then, doing program management work. And I'm also the owner of a second company, which is a private management company for collegiate sports and recreation facilities, which is about 20 years old and has been steadily growing over that time. In my professional positions, I've had the pleasure of being able to work on a number of professional sports stadium and related venue projects, and some of the best known are my firm Brailsford & Dunleavy was the project manager for Nationals Park in D.C., working for the D.C. government. We're currently assisting in the completion of D.C. United's new stadium, Audi Field, in D.C., and we've worked on a number of other NFL, Major League Baseball, Minor League Baseball, and collegiate stadium projects across the country. I'm also what I guess is fair to call a two-time player for the Washington Irish, and in between an old boys player for the Wild Geese Rugby Club. First went out for the Irish in '89, and although I took a big hiatus in between, I've been playing for them again for the last few years. My more illustriously careered partner, Paul Sheehy. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks first off for everyone attending. Really excited, and Matt, it was great seeing everyone come together during the Wales South Africa game. In spite of all the things that we may have had working against us, as Matt already pointed out, this community came together and 24,000 people showed up. So I think that shows you the strength in this area. I've been, I'll start with my rugby first. Started playing rugby at Fairfield University up in Connecticut. And, that was my freshman year where I first touched a rugby ball and fell in love with the sport. Moved to Washington, D.C., where, my family had, where I was born, and started playing for the Washington Rugby Club. Actually got my first job with Senator Ted Kennedy as his personal assistant through rugby. So rugby's always been very good to me, and this is just a great way for me to give back to it. But played for the Washington Rugby Club till about 1993. During that time, was fortunate enough to play for the ERU, and then make the Eagles, which was a phenomenal experience, the '91 Rugby World Cup. My first match was against the New Zealand All Blacks, so great way to start. And my parents were in the stadium, so they certainly fell in love with the game. And then my second match was against England in Twickenham, so I had a really good start there. Ended up receiving 4 caps in 15s, and then a number of 7s caps also. Played overseas. I wanted to play at a higher level, so I went to Australia to play in it was the amateur era at the time. And but like many players, was seeking to play at the highest level, and Australia had won the World Cup. So once I was through with that, I retired at the age of 30 and said I had to start paying for all these, for all these wonderful trips I'd had, and get a family together. And started working for our company, Sheehy Auto Stores. My father founded that in 1966. So we are in our, celebrated our 50th year a couple of years ago, and we have 22 locations. My brother is our CEO, and he is also a rugby player. So rugby has always been a part of our lives. And one of the things we found in our 22 locations in the Mid-Atlantic is that there was a rugby program within each of those stores. And our businesses are community businesses. We hire people in that community. We have 2,400 employees. By the way, anyone on this call that needs a car, make sure you check with me afterwards. But we also have some great rugby programs. We're big in Annapolis, and that's where the Naval Academy is. In Fredericksburg, University of Mary Washington, we support them. A lot of youth teams that we support, the Maryland Exiles and Chantilly Youth Rugby, Loudon Youth Rugby in Alexandria. So, we found that that's been a really good way for us to give back to the community, and obviously in return we've had a lot of those fans and parents and come buy cars from us. So it's worked real well. So I've also had 3 children that have played for Gonzaga High School. My third son just won the 4th national championship there, and that's just been an incredible experience. And what Lee Kelly has done with that program, of 1,000 kids there and 200 of them play rugby, has really been special. I coach there. I also coach a sevens team, D&B United Sevens, which really kind of united all the local high school teams, and we traveled and did quite well. I finished up this year. So sport of rugby has been very good to me. I met my wife as we were touring California. And just one last thing, I've always been thinking about professional rugby. Had some conversations with Dan Lyle, who played locally, by the way, we just talked about professional rugby. I started looking at Pro 14 rugby, and we looked at Houston, and then we decided that Washington might be a better fit. Last September 2017, I decided it wasn't a good idea, and we weren't ready for that scale. Pro 14 decided to go to South Africa, which was a good decision on their behalf, and I started watching MLR rugby, and I really felt that, boy, that was the right model. It was a more organic, it was an American model, and was able to beat Chris at one of the Wales, South Africa events at the South African Embassy, and we got together and really thought this would be a fantastic thing for the DC area. So that's where we are now. Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Paul. And when Paul and I met, we both had the good fortune of having been contacted or making contact with the gentleman who had just committed to start the New York Major League Rugby team. And in a few minutes, we'll get into some more detail about the league itself and how it's put together. But one of the things you'll hear is that New York is the first East Coast team, and very wisely, he's looking to get East Coast rivals signed onto the league so that he can have some regional competition and we can get some healthy rivalry going on between the two. So that's when Paul and I came together and started cooking this up. Paul and we formed a partnership. The two of us are committed to driving this thing forward. It is possible that we will add other partners as we proceed, but the two of us have ourselves organized well to move this forward. So when you hear DCMLR, that's usually referring to us. So what is Major League Rugby? Major League Rugby is the first professional rugby effort in the U.S. that is really growing organically out of the long-standing and very successful club rugby culture in the U.S. There have been prior efforts at professional rugby at different levels, but this is the first one that has really emerged from a group of long-standing existing clubs with the strength of tradition and background and momentum on their sides to come together and create a new level of rugby in the U.S. There are currently 7 teams playing their first season. They are most of the way through their first season, which was a shortened season for reasons we won't get into this evening, but they are approaching the end of their regular season. We'll be entering a round of semifinals and then a championship in early July. Those 7 current clubs are in Austin, Texas, Glendale, Colorado, Houston, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, San Diego, California, Seattle, Washington, and Salt Lake City, Utah. There are a number of groups in different cities that are in various levels of discussion with the league about entering as soon as next season, which will start at the very end of January 2019 and essentially run February, March, April, May through those 4 months of regular season, with, again, playoffs and a championship in June next year. And that's expected to be the season schedule moving forward in future years. As I mentioned, New York City has already committed. They're fully entered as a member of the league, and this past season they ran some exhibition games. They have started to put a team together, but they will not enter full competition until next spring. And of course, we are on the list, and there are various levels of discussion underway with Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Ontario, and Vancouver. Those 7 clubs, plus New York, that came together really organized themselves, as I said, somewhat organically. Basically, folks that knew each other through the rugby network, representing a series of well-established clubs or well-established rugby communities, came together and agreed to create an effort to start a professional league, then hired a league office headed by a commissioner and a deputy commissioner. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. But an interesting thing is that these clubs, they all came together in very different ways. Some, like Austin, were created very much by a single existing club-level team that wanted to put together a new professional team, and the Austin Huns that had been very successfully playing in Austin for many years created Austin Elite as their professional level affiliate team that entered Major League Rugby. Others had different stories. Glendale Raptors had essentially been playing at something close to a professional organization for several years now, out of a beautiful facility in Glendale, Colorado that hosts many events, and they just promoted their team rather than creating a new one. Essentially promoted their club team to the professional level. Others, like New York, really put themselves together by drawing together all of the successful clubs in their region and assembling essentially a select side representing those clubs, and are operating under that banner of Rugby United New York to reflect their composition of a number of different clubs. So they all came together in many different ways organically, but created professional teams to start this league. Another interesting point about them is that a number of them have affiliations with overseas rugby brands, whether it's the Seattle organization that's got an affiliation with London Saracens and actually have an investment partner in Canterbury Rugby Union, and there are other examples you see scattered throughout the list there. But there are clubs are seeking not just the financial backing, but more so the connections to the rugby expertise, the coaching, and in some cases player exchange opportunities with overseas rugby organizations. The league is led by a commissioner and a deputy commissioner with a couple of key advisors involved. The commissioner, Dean Howes, was engaged by the owners collectively to serve as commissioner. Dean's background is that he's been one of the driving forces behind the success of Major League Soccer over the last decade or so. He was one of the founding partners and the CEO for a number of years of Real Salt Lake, built their stadium facility out there, has participated in owning and operating a number of other professional sports teams at different levels. And Dean is somebody whom we've spent enough time with to get to know. He's got a real vision for how an organization like Major League Rugby can succeed by starting at a very modest grassroots level and growing from there, very much the way Major League Soccer has, and learning many of the lessons of what worked and what didn't work about Major League Soccer. His deputy commissioner, Nick Benson, is a name that may in fact be familiar to a number of folks on the call here, because Nick's from our region. Nick, in fact, played rugby in our region for a number of years, including for the Renegades and the Washington Irish for a period of time. He has coached with the Capital Union and the women's select side, and he's known to many of you, and he's a big proponent of the DC market as part of Major League Rugby. There is also Michael Jaquette, a commercial advisor to the organization, who is on point for marketing the commercial rights of the league, including broadcast rights, sponsorship and corporate partners, and the like. And he's got a strong background in those areas with a variety of different league hats. One of the big successes of Major League Rugby right out of the gate is that they did manage to secure a national broadcast contract right away for their very first season. And I hope you've all had the opportunity to watch some of their games. If you haven't, we highly recommend it. We've been very impressed with not only the quality of rugby play and the competitive balance throughout the league, which is made for some really exciting games, but very solid production as well, and a good delivery of the game. CBS Sports Network carries the national package for Major League Rugby. They broadcast one national game of the week every week, and then there are also regional partners in every market that are carrying every game throughout the league, at least throughout their region. Every game throughout the league is also available to be streamed online. Another major partnership that the league has successfully negotiated is with ESPN Plus for direct over the internet streaming, so every game you care to see is accessible online as well. We think it was a real positive mark that the league was able to get that contract negotiated right out of the gate. And even though over time the goal is always for every professional league to increase the value of their broadcast rights and become more financially viable through that, the important thing about broadcasting is being able to get more eyeballs on the game throughout the country. It's basically a 2-hour infomercial for our product, which is professional rugby, and getting that exposure is a terrific success for the league right out of the gate. The league has also made enough of a name for itself that it's being recognized as a major contributor to improving the state of rugby in the U.S. I was a little bit tickled to see the article in The Guardian this past Monday reporting on USA Rugby's victory over Scotland, the first major victory over a Tier 1 nation in USA Rugby's history. And the very subtitle of the article referred to Major League Rugby as part of the reason. It was the first time that every player on the 23-member squad was a professional player for the U.S. And Major League Rugby, of course, is an element in that. So it's certainly part of the league's mission to improve the national team's performance by giving the top players in the U.S. more of an opportunity to compete against the rest of the best, to compete against the best talent in the country, and it's nice to see the Guardian recognizing that. So then to our market. What can we say? The DC Capital Region is an absolutely superlative market for rugby in any way we look at it. Not only is it a large market with strong demographic characteristics and disposable income and all the things you look for when you're putting together a professional sports enterprise, but it's a fantastic rugby market. We all know that because of our years playing in it and the many fantastic experiences we've had as rugby players. Within not only the Capital Union, but the Eastern Penn Rugby Union, which we consider encircled within our market area, there are 190 active rugby clubs and over 7,500 active players at every level, from youth through the high school, collegiate, and senior levels, men's, women's, girls rugby organizations. There are also, within the DC metro region, over 1,200 business executives with some affiliation with rugby, either as former players, as coaches, as parents of players, but people who are interested in and passionate about the sport. So there's a ton of rugby players in our region. There's also a very international population in our region, which is probably a large part of the reason we've got such a great rugby culture to begin with. But of course, being the nation's capital, DC is host to 100 of 105 countries, embassies who have national teams in the World Rugby rankings. 5 of those countries have rugby as a national sport. We know it because we live in this region, but we have so many expats, not only from the UK, but from the Pacific Islands, from Australia, New Zealand, from all the great rugby playing countries of the world. And they too are obviously going to be part of the community we're trying to include in this rugby experience. We've got a terrific collegiate and high school set of institutions. Paul mentioned Gonzaga High School. There's also, of course, Fort Hunt, all the many colleges from Navy to Catholic, GW, Georgetown, Old Dominion, Mason. You can go on with a list of great nationally prominent rugby sides that we have in our region. We also have very active youth rugby in DC Youth Rugby, Alexandria Rugby, many other clubs around the region that are part of the culture that we all are proud of and call part of our community. So this is the second largest rugby playing market in the U.S., and we think probably the densest rugby market in the U.S. in terms of number of players and people that are really passionate about the game within our reach. So we know we've got a terrific opportunity here if we can serve that community, you guys, properly. So how do we intend to do that? What is our vision for the future? Again, we'll focus on 4 key areas. 1, strengthening the pathway. 2, celebrating our rugby community. 3, creating a center for rugby. And then 4, we'll dig a little bit into rugby operations. So first, in terms of strengthening the pathway, if you think about the development of any sport in the U.S. and the pathway that an athlete can pursue going from playing as a youth to high school to college to the club level and beyond, you'll note that rugby has a uniquely shaped distribution, meaning the vast majority of us get our first real exposure and opportunity to engage in rugby at the collegiate level. That's where most of us enter the sport. So what you see in front of you, these funny, almost Christmas tree-shaped looking diagrams illustrate the way the demographics of rugby players are distributed today and the way USA Rugby wants to redistribute them by 2024. So on the left, you see the current membership model. You see that we've got relatively little participation at the youth level, only 12% of the overall number of players. You see this big ballooning outward at the collegiate level, and then a tapering off upward from there. Really, the goal is to move toward a structure that you see on the right, which is much more similar to other successful sports in the U.S., where your greatest amount of participation is at the youth level, getting young people exposure to the sport, getting them to develop the most fundamental and most basic skills, and then proceeding through the different levels to achieve the highest levels at the top. And it is the theory that one way to really accelerate the growth of that youth level is to put that goal at the top, that star on top of the Christmas tree, if you will, that aspiration that young kids can look at and hope to become one day, and that by creating a professional rugby league, we hope to inspire enough interest in the sport overall that we really grow out that youth level, create a more natural pyramid or Christmas tree shape, which creates a stronger pathway for each level in between. That means better players coming through every level all the way up to the highest level, which of course ultimately results in the best competition at the highest level and the greatest improvement of international competition for USA Rugby.
Hey, Chris, if I could just add something here. You know, I really think that really is the key. The model that we have on the right there. You know, I didn't start playing rugby till I was in college, and my sons and my daughter all started playing at the youth level. They learned the skills they needed, went to a great high school that had competitive rugby, and then I've got one now at Dartmouth, one at Clemson, and one who's heading to Wisconsin. They all went to college to play rugby. They've all got at least 8 years of rugby behind them, and then that's heading into college. So, you know, we talk about the pro portion of this, which is critical, but it all starts, and, you know, we want to be sustainable over time. It all starts with really a vibrant youth program that they have an opportunity to go to high school, and then they go to the right proper college to play rugby. So, you know, you look overseas, and kids are starting at a very young age. So that's a critical piece of this.
Absolutely, and you'll see as we proceed, we'll talk a lot about how to create a good professional organization, but you'll also hear us talking a lot about how do we build out an academy system and an affiliation with all the clubs that create those experiences for youth and high school level players. So that's about the pathway. Culturally, what we really care about is that this becomes the center of celebrating our rugby community. Paul and I have enough years on us now, both, that we can look back with a little bit of a wistful eye at all the very hard-fought games that we and our clubs and our teammates have played against clubs from Pennsylvania down to the Carolinas, and the fantastic experiences those were. We believe the spirit of rugby and its culture run deep in our veins, and as Matt said, we don't see enough credit or recognition being given to that culture, and we want this organization to be the catalyst for making that happen. Today, we're already starting to develop plans for how our website can start to become the focus for regional rugby news, where things like Gonzaga landing a national championship and our men's and women's teams going to national playoffs can get some recognition, some press, and where week in, week out, there can be more information available to everybody on what's going on in our rugby community here in the Mid-Atlantic. We want our game presentation to be focused on bringing together the many different clubs and organizations in our rugby community. We envision that when we have a game day, it's not just going to be a Major League Rugby game, but there may be games before and after that, a full day of events, a festival of rugby. We envision our video board and sound experience, including whatever highlight videos or clips we can secure from regional games from the week before. And I know as a father myself that if I had the opportunity to go to any kind of professional game and know that I was going to see a highlight clip of my son or daughter on the video board during halftime, I'd be motivated to get there and have a great time. And we're hoping for everybody to feel that way. We're thinking about themed game days. There may be game events that are focused on inviting and hosting and featuring a particular club from one part of the union or another. We've had the thought that our facility may need to include the home for an organization that's a Rugby Hall of Fame for our region. Different clubs may have Halls of Fames and Classics, and nationally, USA Rugby has its recognitions, but we believe we have a rich enough, diverse enough, and big enough rugby culture that we should be celebrating our heroes and heroines here in the D.C. area in a more formal way. We see our facility serving as the clubhouse for major events, for many different clubs coming together. I'd love to see memorabilia and jerseys from every club in this region in our facility and be represented. And we're very open to other ideas. We're very interested in making sure that this is your organization as much as it is ours. We hope those ideas come our way.
Chris, if I could just add something there.
Of course.
You know, obviously one of the critical pieces is when we figure out scheduling to make sure we work with all the local teams and clubs, and I'd already heard that from some folks, that we make sure and we try and schedule to the best of our ability. It's going to be complicated with all the teams and the travel, but to make it so that it doesn't affect your schedule, and we'd have to work in close coordination with all the teams locally so that we could obviously get the attendance we need, but make it so that you can play your games and then everyone can come celebrate and watch the professional team play. You know, on the Hall of Fame, Jason Maloney actually reached out to me about that. I thought that was a fantastic idea. The main reason is we have a rich history of incredible success in the D.C. area. Obviously, we have current day, but previously, you know, we have a lot of national championships. When I played Potomac Athletic Club, they won the national championship. We finished second a number of times. Maryland Exiles, the Duck Brothers, and Nova have won numerous sevens championships, and we had lots of representation at the Eagle level. I think we have 3 Hall of Famers that I can think of: Robbie Boardley, Kevin Swords, and Dan Lyle. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm not even thinking about. So, you know, we want to really just draw on that incredible tradition. Many of those people that played in that era, Lee Kelly, you know, are coaching very successful programs now today. So we need to connect that history and, you know, put D.C. back where it belongs, which is, quite frankly, you know, the best region in the United States. And I think with everybody on this call and what I saw, Wales, South Africa, you know, it's going to come from the grassroots and then getting everybody involved in it. So these are just some of the ideas and the vision. So, Chris.
Thank you, Paul.
Chris, before you start up again, I just wanted a quick interjection as people are starting to send questions in to remind you that we're not ignoring them. We're going to be taking the Q&As at the end.
Thank you, Chris. One of the cornerstones of our plan is to find or create the right venue for our enterprise. You heard me describe earlier that Major League Rugby is focused on starting at a grassroots level, starting modestly, and building its way up. And we believe that's a wise business strategy. But we also believe that our success depends on our game being presented in the right venue and in the right way. So for that reason, having surveyed the many facilities available in the greater DC metro area and having had conversations with the owners of just about every venue you can think of, we are focused as our primary strategy on the development of a newly constructed rugby-specific facility that would include initially a seating capacity around a competition field of around 5,000 seats, around a top quality natural turf rugby pitch. That facility would include a clubhouse and hospitality opportunities, even though we are focused on not overspending or doing something overly elaborate, but believe we can create some wonderful hospitality opportunities in elegant tented facilities around the pitch. We want to include the right training and fitness facilities within that clubhouse to support a rugby program, have an adjacent practice field that would more likely be artificial turf, potentially under a covered bubble for year-round use and practice. And of course, a complex like this could serve not only a Major League Rugby club, but a whole variety of other uses, including many partner organizations from rugby and men's and women's senior clubs to local colleges. We've had conversations with USA Rugby about events they could host in this venue. We've talked with Matt about the Capital Union hosting championships and other events in this facility. And of course, you can imagine just with the need for field space in our region, there's a variety of other uses that this could serve. So we are targeted on developing a facility like this. We want it to be in a highly accessible location, which to us means most likely the center of our population distribution, so ideally inside the DC Beltway, but in a location accessible both to vehicles by nearby highway access, but also accessible by Metro Rail in a reasonably close proximity to the facility. We're not at liberty to talk about specific locations yet, but we are in some specific conversations right now with landowners about developing a facility like this, and hope to have much more clarity on that in the coming weeks. Then let's turn to what we think many of you may be most interested in hearing about, and which we actually have the least defined about our plans going in the future, and that's the rugby operations. How are we going to select and engage coaching and players and all of those things? And I will say that in contrast to many of the other Major League Rugby clubs that have come together to form the initial members, Paul and I have really focused first on making sure we've got the business operation figured out, that we've got our venue nailed down, that we've got partners nailed down, that we know our market is ready to step up and support us, and we have not been rushing to get the rugby operations constructed and underway. One first decision we're going to have to make in the coming weeks, we're going to have to decide this, whether we are going to try to enter the league in 2019, which would mean playing real games as soon as late January this coming year, or not until 2020. So again, the season run essentially February through May with June playoffs, and we have the option to propose to the league that we enter either in 19 or 2020. And we're going to make that decision based basically on how successful the coming weeks go and how much momentum we feel we have, and whether we've got the ability to get together a quality organization that we can be proud of and put a good rugby product on the field come next January. Even if we don't enter in 2019, we would be likely to do something similar to what New York did this year, which was to begin to construct a team and begin to sign on players and coaching and play a few exhibition games through the first season against MLR teams and other high-quality teams, and go into full competition the following year. So there's a model for doing that as well, which we're also considering. We do think that before any players sign, the first step is going to have to be putting somebody in charge of rugby operations, whether that's a GM or director of rugby operations, or a coach who runs the whole operation. We've seen both of those models used with different MLR teams, and we're thinking through right now which one is the best. We do expect that that coach or director of rugby operations is going to drive a lot of the decision-making about how we construct a team. Paul and I are great lovers of rugby and aficionados of the game, but we don't delude ourselves that we know everything. This isn't going to be a fantasy rugby team where the owners think they can do all the player roster assembly and all the coaching themselves. We're going to put professionals in place to do these things. But we do expect that there's going to be some form of player tryouts or combine that even if we're just doing an exhibition season next year, would be worthwhile for us to undertake sometime this fall. And we are also at the very outset going to begin focusing on the construction of an academy system, a series of affiliations with both existing clubs and organizations that may be created to create that pyramid in the DC region that goes to support a strong pathway and long-term a successful, viable organization. So beyond those basic principles, we don't have a lot in place yet about our rugby organization, which we know is much of what a lot of you are most interested in. We can say that it's our plan to have much more definitive thinking and possibly even personnel to talk about in place by the time of the August 19th general meeting of the Capital Rugby Union, which Matt has invited us to attend as well. So we may have more information to share at that point than we have today.
Yeah, and if I may just jump in here, the
Yes,
August 19 Capital Rugby AGM, there will be another opportunity to speak with at least Chris and maybe Paul. I'm not sure if both of them are making it, but there'll be an opportunity, so be sure to put that on your calendars and attend because we have a lot of votes to go over. Thanks for the interruption.
Sure thing. Thank you, Matt. So what does all this mean for you, the clubs, the coaches, the parents, the participants in rugby in our region? We are looking at this because we believe it can offer a number of benefits to rugby in our region. We think Major League Rugby can do something for all of you. Firstly, there's the pure entertainment and opportunity to watch here in your home market some of the best rugby in the United States 10 times a year over the course of an exhibition and regular season, and if we're lucky, some playoffs. But also, we'd like to think that it is going to be helpful to your recruitment and your attraction of players just by virtue of being in the region that is part of a pathway to the professional league opportunities. The fact that you are in a region that plays where a Major League Rugby team is playing will mean, and the fact that we are including our whole rugby family in our our game presentation and our culture means you'll have exposure, and we would think would make you more attractive to people that are looking for a place to play rugby or considering playing the sport. We also think that the academy system we intend to develop is going to create a better pipeline of players coming up from the youth level for everybody at the higher levels, and there'll be more opportunities to improve your club's rugby through that. We certainly know that our coaching staff, our players, our academy system is going to be very much about sharing knowledge within our region. There'll be opportunities enhanced for coaching clinics, for hosting camps, opportunities to learn about rugby and develop skills. And then finally, we want to be a place where you guys are all able to come together and celebrate the sport. Be proud of what we have, host games at the highest level in the U.S., be part of things as exciting as what the Wales-South Africa match was for all of us a few weeks ago, and really enhance that element of rugby in our community. So in return for that, how can you help us? If you want to promote this effort and see it advanced, here's how we would like you to support us and what you can do for us. Firstly, we do have a website there, dcmlr.com. It has an opportunity for you to sign up for our mailing list, or if you're excited about the marketing and branding elements of what we do, there's a spot for you to submit names for our team naming contest. We're not going to stay DCMLR forever. We are going to brand the organization and find a name that's appropriate for a team in our region. So please come and explore and submit ideas for that. Secondly, and I will underline this one, it is very important for us at this juncture to have a good demonstration of the strength of our market to work through the business plan that we are trying to work through right now. And by that I mean, ultimately, no matter how important things like advertisers and sponsors and broadcast rights and those things may be to professional sports today, at the end of the day, it's all about how many butts are you putting in the seats and how many people are willing to come and watch your games. So we believe we've got a very strong market to do that. We are inviting you to help us demonstrate that by participating in a season ticket deposit drive, where you can go to dcmlr.com/tickets, and all it takes is plunking down $20 and a statement that, yes, I would be interested in purchasing a season ticket package down the road when you guys succeed in bringing professional rugby here. It is fully refundable, meaning if you either ask for it back at any point or if we fail to deliver professional rugby at some point, it comes back to you 100%. But we invite you to participate in that. We invite you to promote it, that is to share that link with your club members and your mailing lists and get the word out that this is a big thing in helping us to make this happen, and that the more successful we are at it, the more rapidly we'll be able to make it happen. So we very much appreciate the level of support we're getting in that. Also,
Chris, can you share how many we have already?
We are over 400 as of yesterday. So that's.
And after this call, we could get to 500.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, yeah. That is after having opened the opportunity roughly simultaneous with the Wales-South Africa game at the beginning of the month. So in 2.5 weeks, we've gotten over 400 seats worth of commitment, and obviously we're striving for as strong a number as we can. I did not mean to cast aspersions on advertisers or sponsors or corporate partners, because of course they're an important part of our business model too. We need sponsorships to make our business plan work, and that's going to include everything from jersey name sponsors who put their name on the front of our jerseys to people who want to advertise within our venue, or people who just want to have hospitality opportunities a party tent within our facility during game time. And I'd say, if anybody has recommendations or referrals or introductions you'd like to make, you can reach out to us through info@DCMLR for that as well. And then finally, just help us spread the word. We're out there on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Find us there, like us, share our posts, retweet the things we tweet. Help us get the word out there to your network of friends. Know what we're trying to do. Know that we're about building the rugby community here in the Mid-Atlantic, not just creating a professional team, and help us spread that word. And we will greatly appreciate your ability to do that. So with that,
hey Chris, can I just add one thing there?
Please, Paul. And
thanks, you did a great job of going over everything. I just want to reiterate, it was really important. We see a lot of the teams that have developed, and many of the teams were existing teams. We are obviously not an existing team. We thought it was very important, first, that we are on a financial sound footing, and meeting Chris as a partner, the two of us were obviously talking to other folks, but I think we're going to have a really strong foundation there of partners. And the second piece was the venue. It would be real easy to just shift right to rugby operations and start working on a coach, but we really need a solid venue. I've been in the DC area playing rugby since 1985. I think we have 3 really good venues on the outskirts: Georgetown Prep, Fredericksburg, Mary Washington, the Naval Academy. But we really need something that draws everybody in. And so those were the first 2 things, with the key being sustainability. In my short-term foray into the Pro 14, I found out that professional rugby is really hard. So you really got to focus on the building blocks first, and then obviously with everybody we have on this call and the talent we have and the 9 million people that live in the Baltimore, D.C. area, a lot of great crossover athletes that are playing professional sports elsewhere. I think we can bring them home, and what we saw the U.S. rugby team do the other night, we're going to contribute to that, and we're going to be a strong participant in that when we get these first couple priorities done. The second thing that I think is really important, because we've all witnessed this sort of slow train wreck with USA Rugby. Don't have anything against them, but geography has worked against our country and our rugby for so long. You look at a lot of these other countries, and they have a much smaller geographical area to work through. So what I think MLR is going to do, it's going to break it up regionally, and of course here we are talking to the Capital Rugby Union, which are a regional group, and really that's the right approach. This needs to be an incredibly strong partnership between MLR and the Capital Region, and I believe that USA Rugby is going to want this, that ultimately a lot of the efforts in this region will shift to MLR, and everyone can focus on that and have something that's tangible, and you can have an actual hand in making this work better. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about MLR's approach to that it's somewhat decentralized and allowing each region to really kind of get their act together and decide on their own path. So that's what got me very excited about this. And we want it to be DC-based. Everything we can do that we can bring in people that have been working on things in the DC area, that's what we're going to try and do. So I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you, Paul. I think that brings us to our Q&A period. So I am hoping that Taryn and Chris, our administrators, have been helping to track some of the major questions, because as I've been focusing on delivering the PowerPoint, I haven't been able to read any of them. But Chris or Taryn,
I can synthesize a couple for you. I know that several people have asked about potential tryouts or potential field locations, which I know you guys have already covered, but in terms of other potential working for the club options behind the scenes, media relations, working in the administrative side, some folks are interested in any thoughts you have on that to start with.
Okay, so good news, if you're interested in working for the club, is we have not hired anybody yet. So not a single position has been filled, and it is likely to be some period of weeks before we start recruiting. The best way to make sure we are aware of you if you want your name in the hat for consideration for any kind of position would be to contact us through info@dcmlr.com. We do have people monitoring the incoming email traffic there every day, and people who are making professional inquiries are being sorted into a specific category, and at the right time we intend to reach back out to those folks to keep them included. So Paul and I are not yet at the point where we're ready to begin sifting through resumes and interviewing people, but it's not too early to let us know who you are, and that's the right vehicle to do it, and we would appreciate that. I am also seeing there are a number of questions related to the venue, and there are only a certain number of, well, a certain amount of information we can share about that, because as I said, we are in active discussions right now. It is our, to reiterate, it is our preference to construct that new rugby-specific, purpose-built facility. We are in discussions with 2 different landholders right now who have opportunities and the ability to partner with us to create something like that. And you never know how negotiations will sort out, but we think we've got good possibilities there. We know that creating something like that, the soonest we could possibly have that ready would be for the 2020 season, not the 2019 season. So assuming that we're at least doing some exhibition games next spring, that means we're going to need to find a temporary venue, or maybe a few temporary venues for an exhibition opportunity, and we're looking at existing collegiate and smaller scale public facilities for those as well. So all of those
Chris
are
and Paul.
next. Yes.
Chris and Paul, I have a question. This is Matt. Have you been awarded the franchise?
We are in, the best description of what we are is in a period of exclusive negotiations with the league. We have secured the rights to the market. Paul and I have an agreement signed with MLR that we are the sole entity with rights to explore the market with them right now, but we have not completed the negotiation of the terms of our entry into the league. And we anticipate doing that by sometime toward the end of July. And that's why we emphasize that things like this season ticket deposit drive is important and helpful to us, because it's important for us to be able to conclude those terms from a position of economic strength. But that was a superlative question, Matt. Thank you for helping. I'm seeing some other questions about whether we are looking at international partnerships or sponsorships similar to Seawolves and Saracens. I will only give a resounding yes. That's another one we can't go into a lot of detail about, but and I'm seeing related questions to that on MLR's rules about international players on the rosters. And yes, it's correct that MLR is structured to include international players on the team's rosters. Of course, it's very much the mission of MLR to promote USA Rugby and promote opportunities for U.S. players to get the experience and the development that will help make the U.S. more competitive internationally. But they also believe that it elevates the level of play for everybody and makes it possible to maintain parity across the league to include some international players on each team. This year their limit was 5 international players per team. They will revisit that number as they grow and move into the future. But clearly there are cases where those international partnerships are part of the pipeline for sourcing those international players, and we are very much exploring the possibilities that may exist for us in those kinds of partnerships.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add there is right now there's 7 teams, and I believe the rosters are somewhere between 25 and 30 people, so that's 210 professional rugby players, and if you expand to 10 or beyond that, you probably really need 30 players per team minimum. So we're looking at 300, and then if they allow 5 players per team from overseas, that takes 50 off. So it's really about developing, and with the amount of rugby that we expect that they're going to be playing professionally, also as the Eagles probably play more rugby, and we see this overseas, one of the big things that happens is you have to have players coming up through the ranks that can replace those international players as they have to play, represent their country, or if they're playing sevens. So, a big part of this is obviously improving the player pool, and sure, we want to add to that with some solid foreign players. I know we've already gotten a lot of interest in players from just at the collegiate level that are looking, when is the DC team coming together. So it's pretty exciting when you start getting those emails, and a lot of coaches, a lot of interest. And just to add to the overseas, whether it's a union or a team, they all want to be, they all want to have an interest in the United States. And I only think that went up dramatically with what happened in Houston the other night. So, and obviously what the Sevens team has done for many years. So it's pretty exciting times to be, I think, we've talked about it for years, and I think it's actually, we're seeing the results on the field now.
There's I guess I see a question that's coming in. Is there a possibility of starting in 19? And have you identified coaches or players yet? Again, no, we have not. And I think part of our decision about whether we play in 19 or 20, and if we play in 20, doing exhibition games in 19 will be determined by how successfully we're able to get together a rugby operation. We do think, and no, we've not hired a coach, we're not recruited players, but that will be the engaging a coach will be the first step in determining how the whole rest of the process goes.
We are putting a list together, so it's fair to say we have names on a list, but we are not there yet.
All right. I see a couple of questions about the league. There's a question about what cities are most likely to join in coming years, and I think we are focused. And if you observed in that map we looked at, almost all of the teams are west of the Mississippi, with New Orleans sitting right on the Mississippi, and New York being the first East Coast team. We're really interested in what additional East Coast, Eastern time zone teams may join. I don't think I'm spilling any secrets to say that the ones we've seen most active or getting the most attention are potential additions out of, well, the names I've seen most are Boston, Atlanta, Toronto, and Los Angeles. And I think there are a number of other teams we listed, or potential teams we listed, but those are the ones I hear in the most active discussion. I do think, and this is a related question from somebody else, I don't think it's our intention to wait to see what other teams get added before making our own decision. We're making our own decision and negotiating our own terms with the league based on our market, and I don't think we need to see any more than New York in there to make that decision. We are hopeful for more East Coast teams to enter in the coming weeks, or excuse me, coming years.
Chris, did you see there was a question in there about local referee groups that was slightly different than some of the others that came in? I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that question.
I didn't see that. I'm trying to pull that up now. There are 2, 3. Oh, it disappeared. I had it there momentarily. There are 2, 3 referee societies in this area. Is there any upside for referees in this? Access for MLR referees, part of the referee team on a match day? I would say absolutely. Just like, and I don't know exactly how MLR has been identifying and engaging its referees, and I'll be clear, it's the league, not the individual teams that will be doing that have those rights. I would certainly like to think that as the league grows, it creates more and more opportunities for referees, and certainly just like our coaching and our players being able to be available to coach youth, that the existence of the league and its presence here would help with referee development and teaching and knowledge sharing.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Chris. You know, I'm a big supporter of the Referee Society. They're wearing their Sheehy Auto Stores shirts around, and you know, we certainly want to support the local Referee Society any way we can. And I think I'm not sure how that relationship has worked with MLR, but we will take that under advisement as we talk to them, because it's real important. Again, we're going to be a DC-based program, and we need referees at every level to support the game and bring those players through the pathway.
Here's an interesting one. Who do you think has been the most commercially successful MLR team this season, and what has made them stand out? Really interesting. Each team has been very different, and if you watch the MLR games, I think the big success has been just how good the games are, how good the quality of rugby is, and how balanced the competition is. I thought beforehand that with all the teams being put together in different ways, that we would have a much more lopsided competition, and that there would be, you know, a couple of real standout teams that were beating up on teams that were bringing up the rear. And although you certainly see, you know, the table stratifying a little bit, you don't see that kind of lopsidedness. And I think that's been fantastic. Commercially, though, you can look at the broadcasts and you can see which stadiums are packed and which ones are sitting a little empty. And I think you know, the ones that we are seeing doing the best commercially are those that have put the right front office staff in place to focus on that. You know, I don't think this is a kind of enterprise where we can expect we will just build it and they will come. Selling every ticket and signing up every sponsor is going to take hard work, and it's going to require us to build up the market over time. And I think the ones you can see doing that are the impressive ones.
Yeah, and I don't think it's fun. I mean, there are definitely a lot of different approaches there. You know, Glendale is a city-based team, which we don't get that sense from a lot of the other teams that they have city support like that. Seattle, I believe, almost all their, I think that all their games are sold out, so they seem to really have gotten Seattle engaged. San Diego, which has always had, you know, excellent club rugby there, they seem to be doing very well too. So we haven't seen all the numbers from these teams, so we're watching on TV and talking to them also. But those two teams seem to be sort of leading the way right now in the model, I would say.
What is USA Rugby's involvement with Major League Rugby?
They are separate organizations on separate missions, but I would say that the relationship appears to be, to us, to be very collaborative. USA Rugby is sanctioning MLR and its players for its competition. You know, this probably isn't the right place, nor do I really know enough to comment on some of the organizational transitions that USA Rugby is going through right now. But we know MLR is doing its best to be supportive and collaborative with USA Rugby as it goes about building its business. I do see a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, Paul.
I just want to say, you know, Dave Hodges, who is in charge of, you know, the players. I don't know his exact title, but I know he works pretty closely with MLR, particularly with, you know, when they have a test match and have to pull players away. I think around the world, you know, the professional teams work pretty closely with the union. I saw a little bit of what happened in Ireland, and I know they were very active. In fact, they support a lot of the players that play for the Pro 14 team. So obviously that model has worked really well, but they do work hand in hand. It's in each of their interests to make sure the other is successful, and that's our approach. And, you know, look, at the end of the day, we want a hugely successful international team that we all can support. That's part of what we want to do here, and that's the absolute pinnacle of the pathway. So, you know, we're going to have to work closely with each other, particularly around the international season and how that's going to affect the players as we build out this league. So, you know, the feeling already is pretty good. Obviously, there's been some turnover at the governance level with USA Rugby, but I think the coach and the people involved, and some people may know better than me that are on this call, I think they're pretty excited about what they see developing in MLR.
I see a couple of questions that I really want to address around the capital selects, and one is asking about whether the creation of an MLR team would sort of replace the capital selects. Another asks about whether the capital selects might serve as exhibition competition, opposition for an MLR squad. I want to emphasize, just as we say we want this enterprise to reinforce and strengthen and grow every level of club rugby, we do not see this conflicting with what the capital selects have so successfully done. And I think it is much more likely that the two would coexist, and certainly we want the MLR team to recruit locally, and we'd like to think that there will be MLR players that come out of capital selects. I also think the idea of preseason exhibition between the selects and an MLR side is a good one. We've already seen some of that well, the selects have played some MLR teams. So I don't, to be clear, we see the professional team as being supportive of the selects as well as the union, as well as all the clubs within it, and not a conflict with it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the yardsticks for our success is, you know, 5 years from now, are more people playing rugby in the DC area? If the answer is yes, then it's been a successful model. So we need to grow the game, and that's at all levels of that Christmas tree that we showed earlier. And so there'll be plenty of opportunity for everything that exists today to hopefully have more participation in addition to the MLR team. I think that would be our ultimate goal. That's probably what success looks like over time.
All right.
Chris and Paul, do you have any more questions in the queue? Got a couple more minutes left.
I'll ask our able assistants, Taryn and Chris, if there are any major trends or themes you think we missed or scintillating questions we didn't see. I'm trying to. There's a long list of them here. I think many of them are similar, and I'm hoping we've hit on most of the major topics.
Yeah, I think you've hit most of the major themes. There are some, more specific questions about how some of the contract stuff might work for the players and how some of the MLR franchise stuff might work. I don't know if you wanted to touch on any of that now or if that's for a time when you're deeper into operational work.
Yeah, I think I want to point to the August 19th Capital Rugby Union AGM general meeting for the right time to get those answers, and we'll be much better prepared to speak on them then.
Well, I want to thank everybody. We had a lot of people on the call or on the presentation, and I thought it was personally fascinating and very informative. I think that, we look at the professional sports landscape in the United States, and we're sitting right here at the beginning of a new professional sports league, and to hear the insights and listen to the vision and how this all works, I can see the people in the American Football League way back when saying, "Here, we want to build the game. How do we do it?" And I think they would have a similar conversation. So, the Capital Rugby Union is committed to supporting this. I think every administrative body within our union should support this. We've been ignored for a long time, and this is an opportunity, and Paul and Chris have laid out the vision and their risk, and I think supporting them, I know the Capital will support them. And I appreciate both you and Paul and Chris and Taryn taking time out of your schedules to do this presentation. And I encourage everybody to go to their website and to buy the $20 fee seat preference thing. I have done it already, and I'm excited about the opportunity. Thank you all the 64 people that did attend this, and without you, rugby isn't anything. So I'll leave it to Paul and Chris for the last words. But thank you all, and I'll see you at August 19th. That's Sunday, August 19th. Location TBD, 90%. It's going to be at Mary Washington. So I'll see you there. We've got major votes to do. All the positions of the Capital Rugby Union are open for election. And then we've got some bylaw changes that we're going to be talking about, as well as the budget. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris and Paul.
Great.
Well, Chris, I'll go first real quick.
Yeah.
First off, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I know you probably have a lot of more questions that we'll try and get answers to and present at the next meeting. I want to thank Chris for he and his team put this together, and we both have full-time jobs, and Chris has done a tremendous job of really organizing this. You can see why he's my partner, and we just met, I guess it was about 3 months ago, and the way we've come together, I think is, he played for Washington Irish, I played for the Washington Rugby Club. But this is a Washington area venture, and we put that aside real quick just to focus on what could happen if this were to work in this region. It's a lot of hard work, and I get emails and questions, and I try and get to them when I can, and but I'm excited about it. And I'll just end this, that rugby has been fantastic to me. I don't know what I would do with a life without rugby, but and I'm looking forward to this next chapter, and again, Chris, I want to thank you for what you did here today. Matt, thanks for having us on. It was a great opportunity for us to share a little bit of what we're working on. Chris?
Yeah, thank you.
One quick interruption, Chris. Will this presentation be available?
Yes, we are not going to send it out. We will post it on our website in a way that'll be visible and accessible, so you guys can go and review it, and if you wish, download it from there.
Okay, and we'll definitely share that on our platform.
Great. So, yeah, I would just add thank you very much. I echo all of Paul's words. We feel great about the partnership we've got together and the opportunity we've got here. So we appreciate all of your support, and thanks for spending your evening with us.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Have a great Sevens season. I know we got another event coming up this weekend. Best of luck. Safe travels in all that you do. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Taryn. And thank you, Chris McKay. And with that, Capital Rugby Union wishes you good night.
Thank you.
Good night.